So welcome. I want to honor your time and provide opportunity for you to get together in our small groups for our listening circles that we will have. But I do have a presentation. I will try not to get too long-winded on it. But I have put together kind of how we got here and some data points for you. But really what tonight is about is for me to present this information and also provide you with some data, in addition to talk about some of the pros and the cons, and then provide you some opportunity to get into some of our circles with our facilitators, to talk about some of the benefits that you see, to talk about some of the barriers that you see, to also give some honest narrative feedback on how you feel as parents, staff, guardians, and community members on the possibility of ISD moving forward with a 4-day school week. So my name is Beth Shimon. If you have not met me, I am the new superintendent. I get to say, a 1-year superintendent on July 1st. I am formerly from International Falls, and I spent the last 10 years in Duluth, Minnesota as a building principal. It's a great honor to be back home and leading the school district. I've had the privilege to work with some amazing staff members, so I'm really honored to be here tonight. So the slides I'm not going to read verbatim for you, but one of the things that I want to talk to you a little bit about is that prior to my arrival, former Superintendent Grover, the school board, and our community stakeholders invested a significant amount of time with team groups, and they really did a robust investment in looking at what the core purpose was for ISD 361. And really, it was always centered around our students, but it was also centered around our partnerships, and that's home, school, and community. Some of the pillars that we look at, we revisited our strategic plan yesterday with a group of district staff, and we have to do some modifying just because of the new direction that ISD 361 is going and how we are delivering some of our instruction and some of the partnerships we'll have within the community. But when you look at the priority focus areas for the district, it's really centered around systems and structures, making sure that the decisions that we make are data-driven. In addition to that, we're having staff involvement in the decision-making versus it being a top-down leadership style. So then one of the things that we've really had to deep dive into in the maintenance of our facilities and our infrastructure, and that not only includes our schools, but it includes our grounds, it includes our transportation fleet, and so forth. And then last but certainly not least is our community and family engagement, just really making sure that as we continue to build this homeschool partnership, that we're really embedding our community and our students and additional stakeholders in that. So really we have a tagline, and you're going to see this a lot in our branding in the future, is making sure, I think we all know that strong history of the Bronco tradition, long-standing school district. Anywhere you go, people know the history of the International Falls Broncos, but with the mindset that we're going to move forward in some of the changing practices in education. So how we got here today. When we talk about the why, we're really talking about what rural school communities are facing today. And it's evolved actually in the new year because our political climate is even different right now. And what is transpiring is that when we look at some of the data of rural communities, I was just visiting with someone from Cook County Schools this morning, someone from Lake Superior School District. I've had conversations with Carleton, I've had conversations with Grand Rapids. And we're really talking about some of the barriers that we're facing versus some of the metropolitan areas when they have access to funding and they have different access to multi-facilities. So they're looking at different athletic facilities, different schools. But when we talk about the overarching crisis across the nation, what we're talking about is school attendance. And that's not just unique to rural schools, it's a national crisis. And that has really evolved from COVID. And what happened during that time is that we learned that we have to respond under emergency situations, but we have an opportunity to really look at what's working in education and what's not. So what evolved out of COVID was a trend of how education is delivered. And education was delivered through paper packets, it was delivered through online school, it was delivered through homeschooling, and it was delivered through online platforms. So you're looking at online schools, you're looking at Seesaw. So for example, in some elementary schools they use Seesaw, in some high schools they use the apps like Google Classroom. So When we talk about the trends, one of the things that I want to talk to you about for International Falls is we have a very serious attendance problem within our school district. And so some of the data that I'm going to be showing you briefly today is that our data set that our team has been working on shows a glaring problem with Friday school attendance throughout the district from preschool through 12th grade. And we're going to look at that a little bit later in our slides. But it also signifies a significant issue with truancy. And that what truancy means is kids that are coming to school late. So that could be 10 minutes late. That could be 2 hours late. Or in the high school, when you have a 7-period day, sometimes kids will show up for a 3rd-hour period and they've missed those first 2 hours. So that's some of the data that we're going to talk a little bit about the why behind this conversation. But the rural school districts are the ones that are facing the greatest barriers in school attendance, because the other piece that we talk about in that is that the attendance data is showing that it also correlates to retention and enrollment. So people are opting in rural communities because they maybe don't have access to other cities. They're looking at online schools. From Duluth has an online school to Blue Earth has an online school, and they can access those modes anywhere just from International Falls. But some of the other data that we found in our study was Falls Elementary School has an attendance rate, an average daily attendance rate that is below the state average. And the state average is right in the mid-range of mid 70% range. Falls Elementary School is below that. The other data point that we found is our students who attend the Alternative Learning Center are significantly below the average daily attendance for our state guidelines. But the flag that we found for Falls High School is that there is a pattern that has surfaced, that there are significant truancy concerns, and that means truancy for each period throughout the course of a day, or coming late, or taking half the day off. So in some schools, they take attendance, so elementary schools across the country, some do an all-day attendance, some do a morning and an afternoon, and International Falls, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Tate, is morning and afternoon.
We just do once a day now this year, but in the past we had done morning and afternoon.
Okay, and so my former elementary school, we did a morning and afternoon. And then for the high school, they take attendance for every period. So what we're seeing in the attendance trend for the high school is the truancy in addition to the attendance, which we think is having a direct correlation to some of the student achievement numbers that we're seeing. So when we talk about best practices in the classroom and what's happening at core instruction, and core instruction means our core classroom teacher. So for example, if your child has Mrs. Orange, she's one of our first grade teachers, we're talking about core instruction and we're not necessarily talking intervention. If we're talking about the high school, I see Mr. Anderson is here, computers, so he would be a core instruction teacher. So those are some of the key data points that we've looked at. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about the educational modes. So I did highlight that rural school districts are seeing a high number of students that are exiting and they're going to online platforms. And International Falls has roughly 180 students. It fluctuates between 180 and 190 students that actually live in the International Falls district, and they do not access our educational program. So think of the money that is tied to that. Think of the opportunities that are tied to that. So that tells our team that we have to do something different. Why are these students not coming to International Falls Public Schools? Is it the draw of a hybrid model of being able to go to school when you want, how you want? Homeschooling model, families are engaged in that. That's been generations of homeschooling. So we have to look at, when we talk about the future forward platform that we want to integrate into the future of ISD 361, these are things that we're looking at. So in my PowerPoint, you're going to have access to this online, is you'll have access to the Minnesota report cards for Falls Elementary, Falls High School, and the Alternative Learning Center. And I really encourage you to look at that, and I really encourage you not to pass judgment based on the statistics that you look at, because there are so many variables that contribute to the why. So if you see a 56% proficiency rate in reading, there are a number of reasons for that. Does it have to do with core instruction? Yeah, it does. Does it have to do with school attendance? Yes, it does. Does it have to do with the curriculum that's being taught in the classroom? Yes, it does. Does it have to do with social emotional wellness of our students? Absolutely. So you have to really be thinking about that whole child model. So when we talk about those barriers, we are really looking deeply at the data of what International Falls Public School District says, and that is access, opportunities, enrollment, retention, and is the structure of our school district best in what we currently have as an instructional model. The last pillar that I want to talk about is district costs and funding alignment. So when we talk about the political climate, there's a big question mark right now. For those of you who don't know, there's been an executive order about dismantling the Department of Education. What does that mean? We don't know yet. We don't know what that means in how it will impact the certainty of the federal funding that comes into our schools and how that is actually going to work with the most marginalized populations that we work with. Those dollars are tied to our Title I funds, and that is the socioeconomic status of our students, and funding actually comes in for that. It is an access point of what we have available to us for grants that we can apply to. It has an impact on our special education programming, and it has an impact on our school meal program. But a lot of that's going to be tied up in lawsuits right now. But I want to be very honest and transparent. That is a question mark because we don't know what that's going to look like for the next school year and what we will have access to for funding. So, next pillar we talked about, retention enrollment, is tied to funding. We get a per pupil dollar amount. We've also spent some time looking at revenue versus expenses. What does our data say? Are we overspending in areas that really we could pull back in? And I want you to know we are committed to that as a school district. And we will tighten up where we have to. But we have to make our decisions based on data, not what we think. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the referendum. I know that there's been question marks about the referendum. We just passed this. We are very grateful that we passed this. This school district facilities are 70 plus years old. The infrastructures are failing. Every day there is a new challenge or a new barrier that we are facing. The referendum is going to provide an opportunity for us to fix some areas that are in dire critical need that we need as teachers, principals, paraprofessionals, our custodial team, most importantly, to make sure our facilities meet 21st century learning and support our kids. Our kids not only in academics but also athletics and activities. Last but not least, please know that our district's committed to doing comprehensive needs assessment. So that means we are looking at our funding, we are invested in looking at what our culture and climate rates look like, invested in what we're doing for how we're delivering education, whether it's a classroom, boots on the ground teacher, do we need to do hybrid model, that means partial days in school, partial days at home, and making sure we're offering a variety of equitable opportunities for our students and families to experience rigorous learning. So this is the data that I have to date, and I briefly want to just share this with you. So this is our attendance team did some work for us. And what this data shows for Falls Elementary School, we have data that we went back the last 5 years. And I just want to give a shout out to Mr. Boyle. He is amazing when it comes to putting data grids together for people. But this is school attendance. When we start looking at a 4-day school week, the attendance is really based on 5 school days. So what we did is we pulled data from the last 5 years and we took a look at the most attended day of the week in a calendar year. We took the average daily attendance and we looked at the data. So when we looked at 2023, we saw that Thursday in the calendar year of our 23 school year, Thursdays were the most well-attended day of the school week for Falls Elementary School, pre-K through 5. When we look at that data of the best day, the other percentage rates that you see was the increase in absenteeism. So as you can see, Friday is significant in what that looks like. We can see that the next highly attended day of school in 2023 was Mondays. So look at the increase in absences that we run into. And there was numbers that we came across that showed that some of our students across the district as a whole, there was one data point that came out that we had 40.8% of our students in the district on one day on a Friday. that's over half being absent. And I'm not giving you this data to sell you the 4-day work week or school week. I'm giving you this data because these are the facts, and I really think people have to make decisions based on data. So when we look at 2024, we see the same thing happening. We see in 2024 school year, we see that Wednesday was the most attended school day of the year. So we laid out the calendar. So some school days, Mondays we miss, right? There's a lot of Mondays that are off for special holidays. We equated those so we made them equal throughout the school year. And when we looked at this, we saw again, the trend showed there was a 45.51% increase in absences that day throughout the entirety of the school year. That was the average daily increase. And again, we found that Tuesday in 2024 was the second most attended school day of the year. In the 5 years, and we're going to try and go back 8 years, in all 5 years, the same data trend held. And every data trend point was anywhere from 24.20% to 48.21%. That was the range. And now this year we're on a track to possibly hitting 50%, which is very concerning to me as a school leader. That tells me we have work to do just as a district in school attendance, positive school attendance, and truancy. And for those of you who don't know, if a child misses 1 day of school, it takes a family and a teacher 3 additional days to make up for that one lost school day, because they're building on each school day based on what they're teaching to your child to the Minnesota state standards. So here's Falls High School. In 2023, the most attended school day was Wednesday. Again, Friday shows that the greatest absences for 2023 was double Fridays. In addition to 2024, again, the most attended school day, Wednesday, and again, we're getting up there almost to 50% of the students being absent on Fridays for the entire school year. So when we talk about a sustainable model within our rural school communities, I had the opportunity to really visit with the Lake Superior School District Superintendent, and she gave some really great insight. She's one of the leaders in northern Minnesota that's really vested her school community in a 4-day school week. They're one of the districts that have done some deep-rooted work, and I think they're going into their 7th or 8th year of being a 4-day school week. But what they have found, and this is the data that we're seeing online, so some of the highlights that they show from a sustainable model in rural school districts and what transforms within a school district is that you see a significant change in the staff and student morale, because they know that they have 4 days to work on grade level standards. And so what they're seeing is a higher increase in positive school attendance, not only by students, but they're seeing it by staff also, which is taking substitute teachers, substitute paraprofessionals, substitute custodians. We're having a reduction in that. And I will be the first to say we highly adore and respect the people that sub for our schools when our teachers are gone. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that our classroom teachers are in the classroom working with our students as much as possible. Student attendance increase, that you're going to see later in one slide, but they saw in Lake Superior, they saw almost an 80+% increase in student attendance when they went to a 4-day school week. Overall positivity in culture and climate, and then they started exploring flex learning experiences. So they talked about, what do hybrid models look like? That's online, that's in person. What does our daily schedule look like? How can we embed more project-based learning in that expansion of that 45 minutes that's added on to each school day? Talking about early outs going away, so there's no more early outs. In addition to making sure that all of the district strategic plans are aligned with the school district's educational modes. So making sure that whatever we enhance to provide as educational opportunities are aligned with our strategic plan. We are part of a northeastern Minnesota school regional group of superintendents, and the superintendents that we work with include Little Fork, Big Falls, St. Louis County Schools, Mountain Iron Buell, Net Lake. These are the schools that are in our region, and that's who I meet with every week. And as of last night, Little Fork, Big Falls, St. Louis County Schools, they have moved to their board has approved a 4-day school week. Net Lake, I believe, comes up for discussion with the board in April, as does International Falls comes up for discussion with our school board in April. Other districts that are currently in a 4-day school week that we work with sometimes with activities and professional development opportunities include Black Duck, Lake Superior School District, and Carlton. So these are just some of the benefits and barriers that we see through research, but they're also concerns that our citizens have from staff, students, and community members. And so we have the list of some of the barriers that people feel are going to impact their household and how the educational model is delivered. And then there's some additional pros and benefits that people see. And most of the feedback that we've received as a school district directly correlates with the research that is out there on 4-day school weeks. So cost savings benefit, teacher recruitment. You will see a higher level of applications come into school districts that are a 4-day versus a 5-day. And I can tell you as a rural school district leader, for example, we have 3 full-time certified positions out, one for a social worker, one for a social studies teacher, and an alternative learning center teacher. We have 2 applications for one application for the other position, and 0 applications for the other. So this is a true barrier that rural school districts face is having that draw to get qualified people to apply into full-time teaching positions. Flexibility for students and family. Current research has just come out, a reduction in bullying and fighting on school sites, in addition to sleep enhancement. Some of the challenges, and this is one of the big ones that we're seeing in the data that's coming in for the district, is childcare. The question and potential for learning gaps for students who need intervention. Access to school meals, which we talked about when we talked about the executive order. Unstructured time. Balancing a school day for our youngest learners, in addition to the cost savings. There's some data out on is it the true cost savings and how can we identify what those cost savings look like. These are the 4 pillars for academics, the priority focus that we have, and as you know, in my opinion, International Falls Elementary School is one of the leaders in northern Minnesota for getting behind the science of reading and implementing the professional development training for our educators for the READ Act, and I think we're ahead of the game in that, and you can see it in last year's NCA test results. So I want to really compliment the Falls Elementary team. Academic priorities include, our focus would be on engagement and how we make sure that when people, students and staff are here, making sure that their day is highly effective and will have a high level of instructional delivery. We will always have that, but we know that a longer school day does have concerns, especially for our littlest learners. But when I talked to Lake Superior School District, 85.8% of their students attended more than 90% of the school year. And they had the same attendance barriers that we had going into their transition to a 4-day school week. International Falls staff have committed to the Minnesota MTSS model, and what that really is the delivery of a whole child model. That includes academics, social emotional, school attendance, and making sure that we have the best outcomes for all students, whether they're getting remediation, intervention, or enrichment. Making sure that we have offerings for those students who are proficient or at mastery. And then last but not least, making sure that we're in close partnership with MDE and following and committed to our strategic plan under a whole child model. One of the other things that I want you to know is, though there are barriers, whether the school board approves this or does not, we are committed to educational excellence for your kids. And now we have to talk about the finances. So the current data that we have, our financial partners are CISO. We do not have a financial officer that works on site for the district. We work with a business, CISO, and I've been working with them over the last few weeks talking about some of the financial barriers and opportunities for our school district. So we're committed to fiscal responsibility. We're very committed to this always, but we know that there's concern out there regarding the tax base. We know that there's concern out there regarding the referendum. I want you to know, as a school district's leader, I am committed to making sure that we are spending our money wisely, and we are cutting where we need to, and we are committed to investing where we need to. So as we look at this, and I can tell you the school board is too, and we have great conversations surrounding this. We are going to be modifying our strategic plan based on some of the facility needs that are coming up. Every day we seem to have a barrier with a facility issue, and we are committed to making sure that we're invested to maintaining our facilities and not just doing fixes, Band-Aid fixes. So we are also want to make sure national crisis is social emotional wellness, and I think everybody knows that. Our students are, if you have not read the Minnesota Student Survey, I encourage you to go online and look at that. Minnesota schools across the country have students do a survey based on where they're at mental health wise. It is anonymous, families can opt out of it, but the results are shocking. Our kids are struggling. Social media today is an interesting contributor to that. The pressures are high. Academic rigor, that need to feel going to college, dynamics outside of school, but I really encourage you to take a look at the Minnesota Student Survey. It's a very interesting read. But in my conversations and really breaking it down with CISO, our financial team, if International Falls Public Schools went to a 4-day school week, the projected reductions annually would be right around $450,000 a year. The number was actually higher, but I am a conservative person when we start talking about money. So I want you to know that this is inclusive of transportation. That's one of our greatest, that's one of the deepest investments we have when it comes to finances, is when we push out our fleets. And one of the reasons it's so high for rural communities is the span that they have to go to for picking up our kids. So you're thinking about Capitogama, to Indus, to Little Fork, out to Ray area, out to the lake. And that is one of the higher areas that we do spend in. It includes utilities, water, heat, substitute costs, also some of the hourly positions that we have to revisit, in addition to other district facility efficiencies. So when we talk about community support and solutions, I want you to know that I've read every survey 5 times that have come in, and right now we're sitting at about 600 responses. And the data is really interesting, and the concerns are real, and I want you to know that we recognize those concerns, and regardless of what the school board decides, whether they vote against it or for it, I want you to know that we will not turn our heads to the barriers that you bring up. We will be in the arena making sure that we come up with some solutions, especially when we're talking about childcare. We have a district grant writer now, Ms. Ashley Hall. She has been a force trying to find additional funding to come in when it comes to wellness, physical activity, when it comes to what can we do for summer enrichment programs. I know that International Falls used to have a summer school program. We're trying hard to bring all those things back, but the one that was very loud and clear was the need for after-school childcare and Friday childcare should the board vote on this. Positives that came out in the survey were opportunities to be able to leave without feeling that you were going to get the check mark for not being in school on Fridays, because a lot of times we see families that they're leaving for activities and they're bringing their younger students too. But just know that we're committed to solutions. So as we decide, as we move forward, regardless of what the school board determines, we are committed to innovative approaches and moving forward to make sure we expand our learning opportunities for our kids. But also know that if the school board should decide to move forward with this, what will happen is we will have to come up with an application that will go to the Department of Education, and they're the ones that would have the final say is if this could go forward. But in order to move the application forward, we do have to have the support of the school board. Right now, there's pretty good support for it, but there's also concerns surrounding it by our community. So we're going to talk a little bit more about new opportunities that are coming for the district. I'm going to be doing a virtual presentation at the end of April, but we are going to be introducing an online school, opportunities for synchronous and asynchronous learning, that's in person and online. Focus is going to continue to be on small class sizes, college in our schools. We're going to have a new work-based learning program at the high school where kids are going to have the opportunity to go out and partner with community businesses. That is something that has been celebrated with the possibility of a 4-day work week. People have asked if the students would still be able to come and invest in their work-based learning experience, in addition to enhancing not only our college pathway, but our trades pathway for our kids. We will have another community listening session on the 7th and on the 15th. One will be in the morning, one will be in the evening. At the April board meeting, prior to that, the school board will be presented with all of the data, survey results, feedback from the listening session, the data and the presentations from today, and then they will make the decision if we will move forward for next year, or if it's something that they want to have on hold, or if they absolutely reject it. If they determine that they want to move forward, the application has to be submitted for next school year to MDE on May 1st. Is there anybody who really wants to ask something right now that cannot wait for a focus group? Because you're welcome.
Another clarification, you said for every day that a child misses in school, it takes, did you say 3 days?
Yes.
To catch up?
Yep.
Okay.
A school day with their peers.
Sure.
Because the teachers build on their units, so they need that foundational day before content to go into the next unit lesson. So that's really critically important. So if the teacher is doing a unit for a week and they've missed 3 days of that unit, they've missed all that foundational instructional material to help them for those last 2 days of the unit. So it's really important. Sickness, kids are sick. Don't get me wrong, that happens. Staff are sick. But there is a clear barrier of children missing school during instructional times that we have set. One of the questions people had, and it was on the survey if you didn't see it, a very deep concern about the extension of what the day will look like. And I know there was some misinformation out there that some school district would have 12 minutes added to the front end, and then 12 minutes to the back end. And that International Falls was going to have hours added to the front and the back end. That is not true. There would be approximately 45 minutes added to the school day, right? So you're looking at 20 plus minutes on one side, 20 minutes on the end. But the other piece that you have to remember is there would be no early outs anymore. Early outs would be taken off that, should that be something that the school board decides. So there's beautiful Rainy Lake. I just want you to know that I appreciate that you're here tonight. I know this is a tough conversation in some realm, but I also know that there is many positives surrounding a 4-day school week. Your feelings matter to us,